What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The USC Trojans are up next before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough that schedule is. Let's take a look back at what USC did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for USC. My projection had them at 10-2, and then my prediction for this team was also 10-2, but USC was a little bit worse than that compared to my projection and predictions last year for this team. USC coming off a very disappointing 7-5 season in 2023, but if you count their bowl game victory at the end of the year, this team officially went 8-5 overall in 2023, but still a very disappointing season for USC last year. I did predict this team to go to the Pac-12 championship last season because they had Caleb Williams returning at quarterback. He is now gone to the NFL draft, so USC will have a new quarterback as they are now heading into the Big Ten next season. Here was the schedule last year here for USC in 2023, and of course this was their last year in the Pac-12. You look at their non-conference schedule, though. They played San Jose State in Nevada, so a couple of cupcake games there in the non-conference, and then, of course, had to play Notre Dame in the non-conference as well. They ended up losing that game on the road, and then you look at the Pac-12 schedule. They lost to Utah here at home on October 21st, lost to Washington here on November 4th, and then they lost on the road here at Oregon on November 11th, and then they lost to UCLA here on November 18th. So they lost their three games, the last three games of the season in the month of November. It was just a very tough season for USC, and they started out undefeated, but then the downfall kind of started to come right after that Utah game, and USC just could not really get any more wins down the stretch. So let's now look ahead to 2024. Again, USC heading to the Big Ten next season, and here is that schedule for 2024. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who USC will play in the non-conference this upcoming season. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will, of course, play LSU here. That game's going to be on a neutral site venue. That game will be, of course, in Las Vegas in week number 1 of the season. That game, of course, will be on a Sunday night. So I'm looking forward to this non-conference matchup between LSU and USC. And then they play Utah State here in the non-conference. And then, of course, they'll play Notre Dame here. It seems like they play Notre Dame every single year because that's a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. But Notre Dame absolutely dominated USC last year, so it's kind of like a revenge game here for USC. But this non-conference schedule, you look at it, it's a very tough non-conference schedule. Again, LSU and Notre Dame are two very quality teams in the non-conference, and then you really only got one cupcake game here with Utah State. So that's the non-conference schedule here for USC. Let's now go back to the schedule here for 2024. So again, they'll open things up here with LSU on September the 1st. Again, that game's going to be on a Sunday, and it will be in Las Vegas, Nevada on a neutral site venue. So they will play LSU here in week number 1. And then after that, it's Utah State here on September the 7th. And then they get a bye week here on September the 14th. Their bye week comes, officially in the third weekend of the month of September. So they do get a bye week, but it's a pretty good spot for a bye week. They do go on the road to face Michigan here in their first official Big Ten conference game on September 21st. And again, that game is on the road, but they do get a bye week here, which I think is really good news here for USC. And then it's back at home here against Wisconsin here on September 28th. And then they get to the month of October. They'll play Minnesota here on the road on October 5th. And then they play a home game here against Penn State on October the 12th. And then it's on the road here at Maryland on October 19th. Then it's a home game here against Rutgers on October 26th. And then they get to the month of November. They'll play Washington here on the road on November 2nd. And then they get their second bye week here of the season. Their second bye week comes here the second weekend of the month of November. They do get a bye week here. Then they come out of the bye week to play Nebraska here at home on November 16th. And then they go on the road to face rival UCLA here on November 23rd. And then they close things out here with the rivalry game against Notre Dame on November 30th. So that's the schedule for USC in 2024 for their first year, of course, in the Big Ten Conference. You look at this schedule, it's a very tough one. It's not really brutal, but it's a very tough one. I think this schedule is probably one of the toughest here for USC that they've had in recent years. Again, you got LSU in the non-conference. You got Notre Dame as well in the non-conference. The good news is that you get Notre Dame at home, but you had to play Michigan on the road. Minnesota on the road, Maryland on the road, Washington on the road, UCLA also on the road. They, of course, play UCLA almost every year because that's a rivalry game. So, again, this schedule is very tough for USC in 2024. And, again, for a team that's coming off a 7-5 season last year in 2023. Let's now get to the projection here for USC in 2024. And, again, this is not going to be an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough that schedule is. This is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, you can count that as a loss there. You can count that as an automatic loss there in that percentage at 1% in the red. 20% games in the orange, you can count those as a couple touchdowns of underdogs. Again, those are games where USC will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40% games in the yellow, these are going to be games where USC will be about a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown in the yellow. 50-50 games will, of course, stay in the white. Games I think can go either way. 60% games in the purple are going to be games where USC will be favored by at least a touchdown. And then 80% games here in the blue, they'll be favored by a couple touchdowns. And then the 99% games here in the green, pretty much going to be the easy wins here for USC at 99% here in the green. And that's the percentage I'm going to start here with USC for 2024. So, again, this is going to be counted as an easy win here in the green at 99%. So let's get to that easy win. And realistically, I just got one easy win here on this schedule for USC, and that's the cupcake game here against Utah State on September the 7th. So I think USC will be favored by at least like 30-plus points. Not 30-plus points, maybe 18 or more points in this game. I think they'll be like big favorites in this one. They should be able to take care of business in this game. But we have seen USC in the last couple years struggle against like non-conference teams, and especially their defense. Their offense is good enough, but their defense has to get really situated this year. That defense has just got to get better and better as the years go on. So I think USC will be a big favorite in this one. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy game here. It's not a guaranteed win, but it should be like a easy win here for USC in 2024. So that's the only game that I see USC being favored by more than 3 touchdowns. Let's go to the next percentage now in the blue, the games where I think USC will be favored by a couple touchdowns. When I look at this schedule, though, I don't really see any blue games on this schedule. That brings me to my purple games. USC will be favored by at least a touchdown in these purple games at 60%. And I got one game on here as well, and that's Nebraska here at home. So there is only one game here in the Big Ten where I think USC will be about a touchdown of a favorite, and that's the game at home here against Nebraska on November 16th. And they do get a bye week before playing this game, but Nebraska is a program that, is still trying to get back on the rise where they used to be. We saw kind of a little bit of improvement last year for Matt Rule, but again, Nebraska just finds a way to lose those close games. And with that being said, I think USC, maybe this game is probably a shootout here. And I just think USC probably will find a way to win this one in a close game. But it's really too early to tell as of right now. Again, we don't know what the rosters look like just yet, but based off of where these teams were from last year, Nebraska did not make it to a bowl game. So I'm going to favor USC here by at least a touchdown here, and plus they're playing at home. If it was on the road at Nebraska, I would definitely make it a 50-50 game. But that's the only game that I see USC being favored by a touchdown. Again, this schedule is very tough. Let's go to the games now where USC will be about an underdog in. I don't have any red or yellow games, but I do have one orange game here at 20% in the 20% range, and that's on the road here at Michigan. So I think USC will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs here against Michigan. It's not really against USC. It's just based off of the teams from last year. Again, Michigan won it all last year in the national championship. I know Michigan's going to have a lot of roster turnover, but, before, Jim Harbaugh, officially, took the Los Angeles Chargers job, I did Michigan's projection before he was even hired. So when I look at back at my projection for Michigan, I definitely probably should have made this game now like a purple favorite game here for Michigan and a yellow game here for USC, but I can't really change it anymore. That's just how it's going to go here. So I think USC will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs against the defending national champions. Plus, it's on the road here in a very tough environment. I think USC might struggle with the tough environment here. And again, it's going to come down to USC's defense. If they can make some stops this year, again, USC could be a very dangerous team. But That's the only game that I see USC being an underdog here in the Big Ten. And then, of course, the rest of the games here in the white, these are all 50-50 games here for USC. And again, when I just look at USC here, it's kind of hard to tell how good this team is going to be. I'm not really too concerned about the offense. I'm really just concerned about the defense. Again, the defense was one of the worst in the country last year. Again, if that defense can just play really consistently on the defensive side of the football, again, USC has a really good chance to be overall pretty good and a very exciting team to watch. And again, the offense should be really good. They're going to have a new quarterback this year. Caleb Williams, of course, will be missed. But I think USC should be really good on that offensive side of the football. But again, you look at all these 50-50 games, they are definitely very winnable. LSU is a very tough one because that's a neutral site game. Notre Dame is a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. Same thing with UCLA. I know UCLA is going to have a first-year head coach this year, but I think that's still like a very tough game. I think it's still a 50-50 game in my opinion. Same thing with Washington. Both of these teams went in a shootout last year. I think that's still a 50-50 game as well. So all these games that you're seeing in the white are 50-50 games I think can go either way. So let's now get a projected record here for USC in 2024. And again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection just based off of how tough the schedule is. So we count that one green game as a win, and then we average out that purple game at 60% against Nebraska. Then you average out that 20% game here in the orange against Michigan on the road. And then you average out all these 50-50 games at 50%. And the overall projected record that you get here for USC is 7-5 for 2024. So a 7-5 projection here for USC, way lower for me than, of course, compared to last year. This year, it's really different. Again, USC does have a very tough schedule. Again, you got LSU and Notre Dame both in the non-conference there. You got Michigan on the road, Washington on the road. These are very tough road games in your first year, of course, in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten is just going to be a very tough conference for USC. A lot of changes, of course, to college football, of course, with all these conferences. We'll see how USC does, but the overall projection comes out to be 7-5 right now, just based on this schedule. Again, it's not really just about, who's favored and also who USC is an underdog to. It's really just based off of the schedule. And this schedule is very tough, and that's the reason why this projection come out to be 7-5. So give me your thoughts on this USC team down in the comments below. What do you think their projected record is for 2024? And what do you think their worst case scenario and best case scenario is for 2024 as well? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.